Houdini is increasingly being used in the game industry. Today we talk to some of the artists behind them: Etienne Carrier, Simon Verstraete, Mishurenko, and Nema Safvati. We talk about their work, working in the industry, and Houdini. This is Hip TV. I want to know your Houdini story. What happened when you discovered it? How did it change everything for you?
It's actually a really funny story. So I'm from Kazakhstan. It's a big country in Central Asia, which is not big on Houdini, unfortunately. So I've been working with 3D graphics more or less for about 10 years. So I started my first little studio 10 years ago. So we've been doing some commercials and stuff like that, like music videos. So 10 years fast forward, I am my master's program for game design, and I'm doing my first game. I got funding for stuff, and I realized I got nice funding, but still not enough to hire separate technical art team. So I have to do something. So with the team of 5 people, we're super limited in resources, and that was 2 years ago. And that nicely coincided with the trainer coming to the NYU, to the university, and giving 2 days workshop in games specifically for my program. And so I opened Houdini 2 years ago and never stopped using it since.
Etienne, what about your story?
So I started as a 3D artist, doing models, texturing, and then I slowly started getting interest into VFX in the games and shaders and stuff, and getting a bit more technical. And I guess there was one of my friends that was more coming from the film industry that let me know about Houdini, and so I started playing with the software at home, and I think the procedural modeling aspect of Houdini was very appealing to me, and I started using it, but with no usage yet, at work. And we started working this new project, which was Diablo-like a mobile game. Well, it was an orthographic game, but small levels, and we wanted to do a lot of them. So I gave Houdini a shot to basically make a tool to just based on a spline to generate all the level layouts and stuff, and do the automatic UV, and with a little painter tool to basically swap the tiles and stuff. And I guess from that point on, I started doing everything with Houdini, and it's been 10 years now, and that's my story, I guess.
Nema, let's hear your story.
I mean, I started out just playing with editing software, and then After Effects, doing 2D stuff, and then the first time I used a 3D software was maybe 13, 14 years ago. It was Maya, and it was that was all I knew for 3 years. And then I went to SIGGRAPH. I walked around and I saw the Houdini, Houdini setup, and they had their little reel play, and it just blew my mind because the water was awesome, and then you could also simulate explosions and all this, and basically everything. So I was I have to check this out. And then, after some time learning on my own, I went to Nomen, where I met you, Debra, and then I met Peter Claes, and you guys taught me a lot. After that, I started freelancing for some of the advertising studios around LA. But I was always interested in film from the beginning. So finally, in 2016, I got hired at Digital Domain, and I worked on Spider-Man: Homecoming, and that was a big deal for me. And after that, I just kind of stayed there as long as I could. But then 2 years ago, roughly, I got hired on staff at Blizzard, which I never really thought about working in games once I started once my career started going in the film industry, but I always loved Blizzard cinematics and I love their games too. So it was too attractive to pass up.
Simon, what about you? When did you first learn Houdini and what was that like?
So it was a few years ago when I was still studying at a school, and my grad work was to research something. So I basically choose Houdini. So I started researching that. And what also was funny is that no other teacher there sort of like knew how to do Houdini. So I started to like more self-learn Houdini there. And what mind blew me a lot was just the fact that in school, everything is like showing you how to do manually model and wrap, place a model in the scene and so on. The Houdini was just like, oh yeah, you can just figure out a way to procedurally place models or unwrap them and so on. And that was like just eye-opening for me. And from there, since I did that grad work, I just kept going with Houdini and kept more researching and go a bit more in depth in what it takes to really try and learn the software. But yeah, as just mentioned, I mean, you can just keep learning Houdini. It's just like forever going and new things are there every time.
So let's talk about your artist work now. And Maria, tell us about your company.
So we are like a small company, so we're doing client work and we're doing our own work, and we're doing like art and experiments, but mostly we're focusing on XR, on VR and AR, like lately a lot on like mobile VR. So that's like what we're doing, that's what we use Houdini for. So I recently made this tutorial because for the game we made this like character generator and we used a lot of MIDI to generate like humane parameters for the characters. So I talked about how this like PDG generating randomness is really bad if you want to design like characters, and how MIDI is really good.
Wow, that's really impressive. I really like this.
This is basically everything is done in Houdini except the environment. So environment is actually done in VR. But everything else, characters and like hair guidelines and all the effects and everything else is Houdini.
This is really funny. Like you're cutting the character's hair.
Yeah. You're cutting, you're competing for money, and then at the end of each level you have this like procedural boss that is like walking and talking and telling you like bad rap and like bad poems.
That's great. Do you like everything equally, like art, design, games, AR, VR, or do you have a particular, do you like it all, or is there something you like more than the others?
So I'm mostly working as a technical artist with like some, if you're in VR, so you have to be the designer to make technical art. You can't just make art, it's really hard. So you have to make the art, make sure the art is intertwined with design. So I do art and design for VR, and of course when you do that, so you have to like make sure you at least serving yourself by programming your stuff. And recently I got into like shader programming and stuff like that. So all about like making things work well, making them look more or less okay. So I'm not like a super artist. I can't do like texturing well or animation, but I can do like some shaders and tools and like thing that works in VR. We're working a lot with like music and gestural interfaces in VR, and basically like synesthetic design, hence the name Synesthetic Echo. So we're trying to join everything: sounds, sensations, music, haptics, and 3D forms.
Etienne, let's talk about your work. The latest work we can show is your work from Far Cry 5?
Exactly, yeah. Basically, I guess we built a procedural pipeline for the world generation. So just to, open world games, there's a lot of open space that won't necessarily receive the attention of a level designer or a level artist. So it's most of the time, like at least 80-90% of the world we need to fill up. So when I joined Ubisoft, my first mandate on Far Cry 5 was simply to build a biome generation tool. Like, I guess the pipeline ended up allowing us to do much more. So we ended up making a whole set of tools, generating the world map like we see here, like the cliff, some like static, I guess just 2D data that was used also for the atmosphere and the fog density, and all of it using Houdini, of course. Yeah, one of the nice aspect of it came also at the end of the project, when it was time to do optimization, make sure that the game was running at proper FPS. It was a breeze to just go and just and in Houdini just adjust a few sliders, would reduce like the amount of trees of that type of plants. And then we had this setup with build machine generation overnight. So each night the whole world would get rebaked on the build machine. So we would just like change one parameter in a Houdini digital asset, save, submit, and then the next day that change was updated in the world.
How much time did you guys have to build all these tools?
Well, the length of the project was about 3 years. So, but the biome tool was ready maybe after less than a year. There was a lot of part that was basically like building the tools in Houdini was quite fast, because of course there was some improvement along the way, but just building the communication pipeline between Houdini and the game engine, I guess that's where it takes the most effort.
Well, it's just gorgeous. Okay, Nema. So this just dropped. But can you talk about these a little bit?
Yeah, so in this shot, I did the magical explosions. It was a really fun effect to do, made of a lot of different elements. The main element being the pyro, obviously. That's both visually and in the setup, the pyro kind of drives all the other elements. There's some stuff I can't get into regarding the pyro, but I look forward to sharing it soon. For now, I can say that there's some custom combustion stuff going on, because we had to build that in, since sparse pyro doesn't have that ability to burn fuel in your pyro sims. So other than the pyro sim, you have the black vellum strands, the RBD debris that shoots up, the dust, which is a separate fluid sim. It's just the density sim, and then there's some particles in there that kind of get lost, but we did sim them. After the base pyro sim, which has a very strong vortex force in it, each of those other elements that I mentioned gets simulated with that same vortex force and some of the velocity of the base pyro sim, and that's what kind of keeps them all connected. So pretty much everything after the pyro sim has some influence from the pyro's velocity field. Of course, the rocks that are shooting up have an initial velocity, but after that they get influenced a bit by the velocity field. You can see it in the second to last explosion clearly. Just a bunch of rocks sort of spinning in the vortex.
Right.
Dust getting pulled off of them and getting sucked in the vortex as well. Layering new elements on you, just keeping them all in the same world with the pyro's velocity field. There's a lot of sims, and they're dependent on one another, or at least some of them are dependent on one another. And so you can't just run them all at the same time. You have to do one and then the other. That takes time, and all the custom stuff we had going on made it more expensive. And then rendering it was also quite a task. The sim times were long, but they were workable, and I would reduce their resolution, write out a separate proxy version of all the fields to use in some of the secondary sims.
And I don't know if everyone has seen this one. What was that called? The blood flower?
That's the blood flower, yeah.
And then this is the blood drum.
This is the blood drum. So yeah, this was just like a VDB made of many curves and points in a point cloud. And then I just took that VDB and I did, this was a vellum sim, but I wasn't simulating the actual VDB geometry. It's way too high res, so I just had like a 2D triangle that's lower res that I could tear in a sim, and I would point to form and do some other cutting processes to make the original VDB follow what the Vellum sim was doing, basically.
Where all the veins that we see are actually modeled, is more like texture work.
So not all of them, but yeah, a lot of the veins that you see, especially the thicker veins that you see, are geometric veins that are a part of the Vellum sim as well.
Yeah. Nice.
But it's a combination of some of the finer detail you see in there is textured on. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, gross and beautiful at the same time. Yeah. That's what's so interesting. Okay, Simon. So we recently saw you at the Hive. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's not like super fully procedural. This demo is mainly showing how fast the plugin has gotten, because it's like fast for geometry creation now. But overall, I started like with really like looking around, of course, for like references for some shapes and interesting shapes and so on. Then I just started to like use the basic modeling features in Houdini, just like making a box, tubes, very simple shapes, using edit poly, extrusions, bevels. And then after that, I basically made like a super small part. So I made like, in the picture here, I made like a third or maybe like a fifth model, and then I just duplicated it like 5 times and then do a bend node. And then you have like sort of this result. And then I exposed the bend properties and also twists in the bend, so I can easily like twist around the bending so it looks like it's like different every time. So I just play around with that. So I just quickly made a more static model, which was like a small piece, into a more procedural approach there. There is also some cool trim sheet notes in there. Paul from Side Effects has made some auto trim. So it automatically tries to find the trim spot on the model on the UV. So it did not unwrap that. I just had to make sure my incoming UVs was good enough for the auto trim to calculate on the UV sheet.
Mm-hmm. When you say that it's faster now, can you elaborate on that? The new plugin for Unreal?
So it's faster in geometry creation. So if you do like static instancing of models, then it's probably the same. But if you're like procedure generating geometry, like this portal, it's just faster in calculating. There's also a feature called proxy mesh, which is sort of like calculating only the necessary things. I don't like know all the specifics, but for example, mesh distance fields don't get calculated because it's sort of like more proxy geometry. So it's just like faster and great for making procedural variations and quickly see the results. So here, like the previous version had like 9 seconds in update time, where with the newer version, you should see like a big improvement. Of course, this depends on like tool per tool. So in my case, I had like a pretty good boost, but if you use like more polys, you might even see bigger improvements because the old tool was a bit slower on importing all these models.
Nice.
I guess with PDG, this one, you seem to bake tile per tile.
Yeah, so with the new plugin, we have like full PDG support and also world composition support in Unreal Engine. So I made like a few HDAs, and then they work together in like a small basic PDG network to show people how to build bigger worlds with PDG and Unreal together.
How did you manage the seams between each tiles to make sure that you don't have like visible seam or line or mismatch?
Well, I took a bit easier approach at the beginning. On the screen here, you see like I generate like a base terrain first, and then I slice it apart. So I'll always have pretty good seams, or sometimes I would mask the border so I don't like tweak the seam too much. So I played a bit safe there to not break up the seam.
And you did some work on Niagara as well?
Yes, with the plugin, sort of like sending a point cloud to the Niagara system. So we save out a file, a Python file where like basically every frame is storing the attributes, so position, time, lifetime, so on, colors, scaling. And you can open this file in Niagara, and then you have the same point cloud movement or animation from Houdini in Niagara. So you can then, on these points, spawn meshes or your normal particle stuff. So in this case, it's also like pretty simple, starting out with just spheres and
That's
volumes.
so cool.
Yeah, pretty nice. Does it support only a specific set of attribute, your point cloud on your what you export to Niagara, or is there a way to, if you need like a custom attribute that you would like to use then on the perhaps on the shader or something that you can link?
Yeah, so by default, there is like a blueprint system in Niagara that looks for like really basic particle attributes, like just position, time. There are a few like orientation normals, but you can like go in that system and start adding your own particles. Like I need a certain attribute that calculates something like a certain direction. Then you can also, you have to add it manually in the system, but you can definitely like just look up this information because it's all stored in Ghent in this file. So if it's stored in the file, you can open it in Niagara as well.
I'm really interested in your passion. What or who inspires you?
I'm really inspired by like various biological phenomena, various algorithms, like diffusions, growth, cell division, stuff like that. So it's really cool and can be used as a start for like many different mechanics or like art styles or like programming algorithms, shaders, basically everything. And that is, what's like most of the beautiful stuff in real life consists of. So that's why it's really inspiring for me, and it really lays nice to Houdini because everything is procedural, can be replicated. So Houdini and like OpenGL, OpenCL, those are like platforms that I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like world creation or playing God sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would have a similar answer, like this observing like specific behavior, the natural pattern and stuff, and then just trying to figure out how it works, and then to find like this mathematical approach to replicate that, like either in Vex or just procedurally is pretty cool. And then the other part would be like this satisfaction of building that once it's done, once the tool is built, just like pressing down the button and that it's gonna generate like a something instantly that would otherwise take hours to do manually. Yeah.
Simon, that's the second thing. Simon inspires me. If we're talking about who, so I like to open his Twitter and see like this enormous productivity because Simon is a monster. Simon does like 30 like tools per day, and everyone is like, how is he doing that?
Yeah, I want to hear about how you're doing that too, Simon.
I think I'm gonna pass.
We want to know your secret. How do you approach a problem that you don't know how to solve?
I guess you just have to sit down and take the time to analyze the process, or like I guess perhaps breaking apart block by block what's the sequence of event that leads to the final result or something, and then just figure out each part one by one.
Do you feel like you have enough time to do that? Do you ever feel like anxiety, like you've been given a task that you have to solve really quick?
Yes, that happens, of course. Sometimes this stress can be good. Maybe it pushes you to be more creative. Other times, like, you would always find, you would make it work in a given time frame. It wouldn't be the most efficient, but perhaps then it would still work. That's the nice thing, I guess, when you have proper time to tackle a problem. To like most of the time anyway, most tools or solution, there's always a first iteration and then polish and then you improve. It's never like, well, sometimes like you can get lucky and you know pretty much what you're doing and you figure out like a very effective way to tackle that problem in one shot. But for me, a lot of time it's an iterative process. There's going to be a first pass and then new ideas will come out, or I'll see where there would be issue or where it's not effective and try to improve it. Sometimes it's also on the end result, the visual result is not good, and then you see what can be improved or where you can add perhaps more detail to make something more realistic or yeah.
I usually don't have any patience like to troubleshoot. If I spend more than an hour, I'm pretty sure that I have like peers who are like more experienced than me that can solve this problem like in 1 minute without like even distracting themselves from what they're doing currently. So I just yell in Discord, or like I'm crying and tearing down if no one is like responding me. But that's my go-to method.
That's really good advice. I need to do that a lot more than I do. Nema, what about you?
It's just a matter of playing around with it until it works. Yeah, because I mean in Houdini you have Vex, and so anything like if you get really cornered, there's probably some math that can get you out of it. So if you don't know it yet, you might have to do a little bit of Googling around and some research and asking your colleagues. But at this point, computer graphics has been around for a while. So a lot of the problems there's a solution for already, and you just have to find it. But yeah, it's the creative problems that you know nobody like if you're doing an effect you've never been asked to do before, and it's not like an average like explosion or destruction thing that you're not, you know, that you've done 100 times before, then again it's just trial and error. Like try different things and see until you get to the look, and then of course it's not all on you as the artist. Like you do a first pass and you share it with the rest of the team and get feedback, and you keep getting better results as you iterate.
I was just curious, you know, Etienne and Nema, you guys work at like the biggest game studios in the world. What do you love about working in a big studio? I mean, I'd like to ask both of them, like, what do you love and what do you not love, if you're allowed to say that? But I'd like to know that contrast. What do you love about working in a big place?
Because I started my career in a much smaller studio, I do have like a point of comparison between the two. And actually, I'm quite happy that I haven't started my career at Ubisoft, where everyone is very specialized, you know. And I wouldn't have the opportunity to learn so much in that context compared to where I started. I had the opportunity to, you know, wear many hats because we're a small team. All of us had to do like a lot of different things. I had the chance to look into VFX and shaders. Like there's more perhaps learning opportunity in a smaller studio. At least for me, I think it was a good thing, and this led me to, like, I guess, give me time to start digging into Houdini, but also start implementing it at work. You know, and like the big studio, there are very big machines. It can be difficult to change things. If you have a new tool that you want, or a new process, new workflow you want to introduce, it might be difficult to change people's mind around, and it was easier to do in a smaller studio. So when I did switch from a small studio to a big studio, what I was looking for is the chance to polish my tools and go much more in depth, and having more time to do that. That's the chance I get being in a big studio. Yeah.
Nema, you worked in visual effects before cinematics in games. Do you love being in cinematics? Like, is this, or do you find that there's a difference?
I mean, I worked on like a couple of video game cinematics before I worked at Blizzard when I was freelancing. But what I like about Blizzard is just the first time I worked somewhere where the whole thing is being created by Blizzard. There's no like other companies,
External client.
Yeah, it's like if you're working on a feature film at a studio, then that studio is being hired by the production company that's making the film, and so there's just like it's a cool experience to and a unique one that it's all being done under one roof, I guess. And then personally, for me, I like it too because I do like to be very specialized and not have to worry about anything other than like just the Houdini part. Like way early in my career, when I was like just starting out as a freelancer, it was definitely hard to it was hard to deal with like all the other stuff. It's nice to just be able to sit and focus. And of course the trade-off is like you probably don't have as much influence over what you're working on, but depending on what it is, like you still get to add your touch to it if you feel like it, that is. Not everybody really cares, is the truth. So
Yeah, no, I mean,
I happen to care.
Yeah, and your work shows it. And Maria, you're the opposite, right? You love, like you mentioned before, you love to have your hands in lots of different things, and you've got a huge variety of things you do. And Simon, you're also, you work more independently, right?
Yeah, because like I chose VR because in VR, so smaller teams are usually better than like bigger teams and can achieve more. Because it's like so intricate in terms of like product design and like management and everything that the more people you add, the more problem you have eventually. Especially if it's not a game, but like let's say interactive experience. I mean, what is really game? No one knows. But yeah, for games too, it's just like too much based on like actual like design voice or like design approach. That's really, the discipline is new, so no one knows it, and like the more people try and stuff, so the more chaotic it is. So like small teams are really, if they figure out the good process, they will really benefit from like the small size. Yeah, the whole thought of like being specialized in something, like for instance doing like only weapons, right? It's just like sounds like hell to me, to my like particular brain. I'm like, okay, you do this month, you do this 2 months, but what after? So you're still doing weapons, and like after a year you're still doing weapons, just better. And I'm like, whoa, I can't live like that. Kind of. And like there are also like, of course, there are like shortcomings of all these things. So I don't get to work with like cool people as much as I want to, because it's all the question of money and like producing skills. I still get to work with cool people, I can hire some cool people, but not the people I would really love to work with. And also like bigger teams means more diverse team. I mean, I'm in New York, so I have like diverse communities and stuff, but if I weren't in New York, so I would be looking for this diversity of thought that people just can't have in like small studios. So a lot of things I have to supplement for myself, such as community, diversity, like I have to seek for mentors outside of my work, because obviously there is no one here like to help me. I have to seek my advocates outside of work as well. And that is like a lot of extra work that people who are employed like in the company usually don't even think about. It's just there for them. And stability, of course. I don't have kids yet, and I can afford to work this way, but maybe if I were having kids, so I would be thinking differently about it. I don't know.
What would you say to your younger self if you could go back in time? What would you tell yourself?
I would try not to interfere if I had the chance to go to my younger self, because I'm quite happy of where I am now, and a lot of it is like maybe a bit of luck. Of course, you can say we can help our luck by creating opportunity for ourselves, but like I guess general advice to people who start in the industry is, of course, you have to work hard and don't be afraid to try new things. When you start, in a depending on which studio you start, like if a small studio or a big studio, and in bigger studio, it's can be tricky to, it can be intimidating maybe, but there's a lot of value of being new because you often have a fresh eye on what works or what feels weird, and sharing new ideas and stuff, and trying new things.
And asking questions.
Yes.
Posed another way, what advice would you give to a newbie, to someone starting out?
I can talk about women, like what advice I would give to women, because this community is incredibly dominated, especially white male dominated. So it's like really hard to find someone who is not a male and like talk with them, like really hard. It's like almost impossible, even like in a big city. So I would say seek out like your friends who are women and like, keep together, but also seek out the mentors. What's like really good thing about Houdini community is that it's very decent, it's not like game developers community. So I'm a part of both and I can see the difference. So there are no creeps in Houdini community. People are very kind, people are sharing, people are like nice to you. There's almost like, I'm sure there is like a sexism like in companies, but for like my communities, it's like, okay. So yeah, seek out mentors and people who'll be like investing and helping you, because being a mentor is really cool for both sides, for mentor and for mentee. So like in seeking out help is like, it's not like embarrassing or whatever. In fact, this is the only way how you can proceed in this tight world, And people are usually like, if you distract them from like the banter between like male dominated, thingies, smoking room or wherever, so they will be kind and they will help you. At least that was my experience. So a little bit of pushing in there, a little bit of like tagging people, just help me.
That's so important, and I love hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, I was really just like all over the place before I came to Gnomon. Like I was learning a lot of different things from different softwares and different sort of disciplines. I wasn't necessarily like strict effects like I am now, but after I came to Gnomon and met you and everyone you met and introduced me to, it just kind of all took off from there. So
what would be some advice you would give to a newbie?
Believe. Believe. It's corny, but it's really, somebody's got to do it. So, and then like you really have to want it though, because if somebody wants it more than you, then they're probably gonna get it first. So you really have to. It's just like really cliche, corny stuff, but believe in yourself and work hard. it's yeah.
Students really struggle over that and people starting out too, because they see everyone going past them, or it's like kind of like a little race that we're in here to like get to the top or get really good and show your work, and there is a lot of pressure to compete.
On that note, like I kind of did myself a favor by accident by being kind of like a recluse at the beginning and not really interacting with anyone, and just like I would read forums but I wouldn't post on them, and so I didn't really ever feel competitive about any of it with anybody. So there was no pressure, and I feel like that's the best environment to at least at first. Like if you're really new, you don't want to get too competitive because you're just gonna get it's gonna get uncomfortable, and the pressure is gonna get in the way of the fun. And the fun's what really, drives good learning, I feel like.
Absolutely. I think if you can have fun with it, it'll go faster. You'll learn faster.
You can get competitive later, and that's fun too in its own way.
That's right. Simon, what advice would you give to a newbie?
I guess like sharing your work. It created a lot of opportunities for me. Like whenever I share something on Twitter, LinkedIn, ArtStation blogs, you create a new opportunity. Like I get often contacted by other studios or recruiters or just people asking questions. So just try to share and push yourself to share your work somewhere. If it doesn't matter where, just you can start simply by joining a Discord group, posting there sometimes your work, try to get feedback and opinion from other people in the industry. And that's really helpful there. Also, I recommend you, like, if you're talking about newbie, how far are you in this process? Like, if you really start from scratch, like I also started from scratch and I decided to go to school, that was really helpful for me. Of course, it has to be, like, you have to be able to pay it because in some countries it's pretty expensive. Other things like also like mentorship is also something like to recommend depending on what you are and what you want. Can be also very helpful.
What do you guys think it takes to be a good artist, to be a good game artist or effects artist?
More now than ever, because to be like, I guess, a Houdini artist, often you'll find people that are really good artists or people that are really technical, and to have both skills and be able to make it work. I think it's a good aspect, and it's not that frequent, I guess.
Yeah, that's been the theme in a lot of these panels that I've been having, is like the eye is super important and the technical.
I think it's a finding balance between like solving the problem and like sufficiently putting your style into solving this problem, your art style or your programming style, depending on what you're doing. So if you manage to solve a problem and add your style and it's working and it looks good and you haven't died solving that, so that is a big success. And like not everyone, can do that. Or like, be depressed or like break down or like lose your friends, lose your family, lose everything and just sit there and cry. So you're like good, you're successful if you manage to do this. If it's like pretty, it's like even more cool. It doesn't have to be even. In this real-time thing, when you have to know like programming and you have to know art and you have to like put it all together, and you also have to be a bridge between purely technical people and purely art people, it's a lot. So technical artists is like, this like this chain that like holds everything together, and that's a big responsibility, and it's hard. And so I would say, just be chill about it.
That's interesting you say that, because I was also going to ask, you need some emotional resilience, right, to handle the stresses of the job?
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Some days are more stressful than others, right?
Yeah, I think it balances out throughout the year overall, but it's definitely like sparse.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you have to have the eye, you have to have the technique, the technical ability, but also kind of like, the team player, have a good attitude and not bring the team down, right?
Yeah, indeed. I think teamwork is a huge part of, and it all balance out, so that's why it's interesting to have people that are very artistic, other very technical. Some people have both skills, but in the end, it's the sum of everything that creates something that is balanced. And you can, like, everyone has its limits, and there's always going to be someone that has a better knowledge in one aspect. So it's nice to then refer to this person and help out. And yeah.
What is your favorite node? And besides the attribute wrangle?
I thought we're gonna be like all of us together saying attribute wrangle.
What about gas field VOP? Is that okay?
That's okay. That's okay. So the gas field VOP.
It's the same thing, just in DOPS, but it's the same.
But what's special about the gas field VOP?
Gas field VOP is just the node you use when you want. It's like a volume VOP, but in DOPS. So it but other than that, so I was kind of joking because I didn't know if you would count that.
I'll let you have that.
It is basically a volume VOP though, and it just runs in DOPS only, because you can't. I mean, you could put down a SOP solver and put a volume VOP in there, or you can just use a gas field VOP. I'm not sure what the performance difference is, but I do prefer to just work with the
And you use that a lot?
yeah, I mean, in pretty much any fluid sim, I'll have at least one. When I say fluid, I mean like pyro.
So there is one node in Houdini that lets you to understand universe, and that is a visualizer node. That is my second favorite after attribute wrangle. So I use it to like solve mathematical problems. I use it for solving Unity problems because Unity doesn't have functionality like this. You visualize the angles, you visualize your vectors, and that's it. You're like in control now.
That's great. I love it. It's a really big teaching tool too.
This is something that, you know, not like included in other like programs such as like Unreal and Unity. So you have to program this functionality to visualize just vectors, and Houdini is just there. And I think it's like one of the like gems, like hidden gems in Houdini. And I wish I knew that sooner because I only like discovered it like half a year ago and using it religiously ever since.
That's great.
That's definitely probably good advice for new people too, is like visualize your data, yeah, as colors, as vector, whatever. Just see what it looks like.
One of my general favorite nodes is, for example, like attribute noise. It can be like very powerful to like add random scale on your instances or have like a bevel controlled by a noise. So you have like a nice variation in your beveling on certain objects. So that gives really cool results. Yeah, just like generally you can use it for like a lot of different things.
If it's not the wrangle, I would say that perhaps the type of node, of course, the HDA concept is awesome. I split like all my HDA library in a ton of separate little functions that I reuse as building blocks. So, but then if I have to say a specific node, I would say maybe the height field or Python node, which is kind of similar to Wrangle in a way. Cheating. If I can't use Wrangle, I'll use Python. It's not as fast.
Okay, we'll give it to you.
Or the snippet node in the VOP network, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with me today, to talk with each other and to share your work and give us a peek into your work life. It's going to be very inspiring for the audience.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, it was nice meeting everyone.
Have a great day, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ken.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, everyone.